training for something?
This is weird.
Yeah,
I've never
this
been to this site.
coming Saturday, the half conversation.
Good for you.
13 miles. And then
Good luck.
take it.
Yeah, impressive.
It was about $500.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I call the meeting to order. This is the second meeting for interest-based bargaining between the DEA and the Dickinson School Board over the terms of the professional negotiated agreement. Item number 2 on the agenda is to review and approve the February 20th, 2017 meeting minutes. Would there be any corrections or amendments to the minutes as they've been presented?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Fay?
I do know that we did talk a little bit about time frame for completion and a target date, and just that is empty right now. And a reminder that the target date is obviously what we were shooting for, but we don't want to set that up as the final date, that if it doesn't happen, that we're going to throw it all into the bucket and not do it.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
Just as a point of clarification, not, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I'm talking about the minutes and not the...
oh, sorry, my fault.
The target date's also in the
In-
minutes,
in-
so I
Yeah.
thought he was on
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. Page
I was on topic.
third paragraph down.
So we're striking that sentence in the third paragraph?
I guess I just wanted to be known that if we don't hit the target date for some reason, we'll strive to obviously to do that. But if we don't, that we don't just toss it all in.
Oh, I think
Oh,
we agree with that.
yes, definitely.
It's just a good reminder as we're pacing ourselves and looking at how many topics we have left and things like that, to know how often we need to be meeting or.
Yeah.
Okay, with that clarification, where are we at with the minutes?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Kim sign these. I get to sign things all the time. Oh, it's Claire.
File in the morning. Item 3, signing the ground rules. I think the ground rules have been distributed. I'm assuming on item 13, we're going to put May 1st, 2017 in there as a target date with the clarification that was just provided during the discussion of the minutes.
I'm in agreement. Do you want to add May 1st on that one? Oh, you already gave that one to her? You want to sign it? Mrs. Schwartz, are you going to add May 1st on? Okay.
Yeah.
Item 4 is introduction and/or resolution of topics. Just for a point of clarification and providing some explanation for the audience, in December, the parties went through interest-based bargaining and spent a day and a half together going through the process and learning about interest-based bargaining in the hopes of moving forward in a more amicable manner. And in reviewing the training material that was provided by Ms. Poppendeck, page 7 talks about the steps of IVB, and I'm just going to walk through those very quickly. The first step being defining the issue, and then identifying interests, developing options, develop objective criteria, judge options by the criteria, develop a solution, and put the solution in writing. And that's the steps that should be utilized when we get to the point of clarifying or resolving topics. But at this point, I think it would be the intention of the chair to just have topics listed and get them all posted up for what we have at this time, because I think the ground rules provide that we have 2 more meetings after this. Because the ground rules were
I think
left.
2 meetings including this, is it not?
I believe it's 2 meetings.
Including this, yes.
I think it's 2 meetings after the meeting where we set the, or, yeah.
Well, let's make sure we're all on the same page there, so we don't have any misunderstanding.
No later than the second meeting following the establishment of ground rules. So it would be 2 meetings from now. There would be, not this meeting, but this meeting, next meeting, and the meeting after that would be the,
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, fine.
Well, because we didn't sign them until today.
yes.
And then we established them last week.
Yep.
But,
So, having said that, whoever would like to list a topic, the floor is open, and I think it would be appropriate to alternate between the parties.
Do we want to write them on a board for the audience's sake?
I think he's got paper up there for that purpose.
Shauna could only write up.
Who has beautiful?
Exactly. I don't want to write.
Anybody.
We'll leave it to you. Good. One of the topics that we would like to present is simplifying leave language.
First word I can't spell it.
We'd like to talk about the length of the contract that we're negotiating.
Another one is flexibility of leave.
As always, we've got our housekeeping language change items. Make sure all the dates are correct and any little changes like that.
When we brought it up last year, we'd like to look at that lane 7 and beyond in the matrix.
I guess on that note, obviously salary schedule is something that we'll need to discuss.
We'd like to take a look at the the frozen lane in 2009 and fix that.
We have a potential tweak for the grievance procedure language.
Stipend for district move.
The co-curricular schedule, really that's kind of another housekeeping item, but changing things from Hagan to Dickinson Middle.
We're not quite sure if it's a topic or more of a point of clarification, but the amount of money deducted for day deducts.
I think we're out for this evening, so if you have some more, then.
Just a discussion of class sizes and caseloads.
And I think it kind of goes with salary schedule, but, you know, obviously wages and benefits. Mr. Chairman, that's all we have for this evening as well.
So we've listed the topics that are available at this time, keeping in mind that there are 2 more meetings for both parties to introduce additional topics beyond the list that's been provided this evening. And normally what my recollection has been done is that we've looked at the housekeeping items as something that's maybe not easy to sign off on tonight, but easy to get a common understanding about it. So, Mrs. Ricks, would you like to do that?
Everybody get one? You'll notice that the highlighted year hasn't been changed yet because that's subject to what we decide as far as the length of the contract that we want to negotiate. But it will need to be changed, obviously. We'll figure that out. mostly just small. On page 3, we've got changing negotiations to negotiated agreement. And then on page 7, all of the HJH changing to DMS for Dickinson Middle School. I think that might be the majority of it.
Mrs. Ricks,
Yes.
is the changing HGH to DMS also the co-curricular schedule you have up there?
Yes, so I guess that's taking care of 2 items. So just the dates, when we figure out what our dates will be, and then that one grammatical correction is all we have this year when we look through it.
Mr. Reed?
But just so that it's clear in my head, the 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth item in red, frozen lane, is that referring to the non-vertical step, not lane?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So, yeah, because I think in the agreement it calls it a step. Lanes are horizontal and whatever.
Frozen step.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Fay?
Mrs. Ricks, I think that looking at what you have for the changes in the negotiated agreement in regards to the housekeeping with the dates and Dickinson Middle School are not, we're not opposed to that at all. I mean, that's perfectly fine. I think that we could actually tentatively agree to that, understanding that obviously we can't, there's not going to be a change until we get a salary schedule in there and the number of years that we decide, the length of the contract, length of the negotiated agreement. But the rest of that, obviously, that we have highlighted in here, I don't think any of us have a problem at all.
Great.
The grievance procedure language, is that part of the last page of the contract as well? Is that something that,
There's nothing edited in what we handed out. If we want to talk about that one, though, we can.
well, no, I was just asking if that was like, if that was what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah,
in the
yes.
contract.
Mm-hmm.
So-
Yep.
This is not, this is current to what it is today.
Okay, yeah. Yes. And then, so that would be subject to change as well, is what I was saying, I guess.
Yeah. There, you know, obviously, everything we have up there.
Yeah,
are-
yeah. But,
I have no problems with the housekeeping
yeah.
of the changes.
Okay, perfect.
And
So is there anything else that anybody wants to?
If we would like to start a discussion about this simplifying the leave language. I mean, we are ready to do so if
Okay.
we want to add that to tonight.
I was wondering if what we needed to establish first was the link, just because that might have a bearing on other things that we would discuss. Does that seem logical, or is that going to be a difficult issue to navigate, or?
I'm not sure how difficult of an issue it'll be, because, you know, we don't know what the legislature is going to look like. You know, and I'm not sure, you know, in the past, we've discussed 1 years and 2 year, obviously. We haven't really thought about it, you know, a whole lot. And I know we don't know what the second biennium might be, in based upon the legislature, if they save a bunch of days for a potential special session, we don't know what that might bring. So I'm not sure what we're prepared to do,
Okay,
honestly.
right. Well, I guess there's certain things that wouldn't be affected by it. Leave language wouldn't be affected by it, but other things would be. Okay, so,
If you don't mind, I don't mind putting that on the agenda for next meeting,
sure.
so we can go back and we can get an idea of what our members are thinking on it, so that we can come back and for sure say yes or no.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm just hoping that we'll have a really good discussion about it and what the pros and cons of going
Oh.
which direction would be.
We could certainly do that if you wanted to.
Okay. Well, either way is fine. I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware that it's something that will need to be probably taken care of sooner rather than later in this process. But sorry, I didn't mean to shut you down.
Nope,
So
you are
if
completely
you
okay with-
are prepared for the leave language, then we can talk about that.
Okay. Just pass out what the current language states.
What page are we on?
Page 9.
And it's, of course, in what you've just passed out to us as well, but we didn't realize you were going to be passing that out, so
It's okay.
just wanted to be prepared. I think we're kind of looking at the sick leave language.
Okay.
And that, you know, there's all kinds of different types of leave, the emergency leave, the doctor appointment versus this, and we're just wondering if there's a way that we can discuss it and maybe simplify it so that there isn't all of this difference between the two.
Difference between the sick leave and the emergency leave, or difference?
Yeah,
Okay.
You just
As-
want sick leave, period. And you don't have to
Well-
say if it's for a doctor's appointment, is that what you're looking at?
Well, we're just,
Right.
we're not necessarily saying,
One way or
this
the
is what
other.
we want. We're
Right.
saying, this is a discussion on,
Right.
can we find a way to make it a lot easier?
Mhm.
As
Okay.
opposed to, okay, I used a doctor's appointment, and I gotta use a doctor's appointment again, but now all of a sudden it becomes something else, and I mean, if we could just find a way to just make it a little easier.
So, do you have a succinct way of defining the issues surrounding it? What's the problem that it's causing, or?
Well, there's definitely a problem for those of us with children. And I know not all teachers have children, but you're only allowed so much of your time for sick leave to be designated to your children. And once you utilize those emergency days, then it turns into having to use your personal days. And once your 2 personal days or 3 personal days for the year are used up, then you can request more emergency leave. And as we know, there are some staff that have had, you know, children that have significant needs and do need to take more of that time off for their kids. Their use of their sick days goes in that realm of things. And so we're just looking at it, you know, it's something that we would like to bring up as a discussion if there's not something that we can do to improve this situation for some of our staff.
I think I'm gonna have to wrap my head around the leave in the first place because we didn't discuss it a lot, I don't think, last year.
No.
And so I haven't been through negotiations where it's been a big topic. And so that's something I'm going to have to be educated on exactly how it works now because I'm not aware.
I hope you figure it out, because when you do, let me know.
Most of us have to go to our school administrator and say, okay, this is my appointment, what do I put it under? It's that confusing at times. And then you do have those people that end up with somebody from central office calling and saying, well, actually, that is an appointment for your child. It needs to go on a personal day because you've used up your emergency leave.
Okay.
Even though, you know, vice versa. Or one example is the day was a doctor's appointment for yourself, and then because it's in another, because we have to go to Bismarck or something, you tie in other appointments for your children as well on those days. So then it was, well, we can do half you sick day and then half emergency leave because the other half is for your child. And that was a conversation that happened this year. So we're just wondering if there's some way we can kind of clean that up a little bit and make it a little bit more you know, an understanding as to what it is, and maybe a little more user-friendly for our sick leave.
Okay, and do you know how much of it, because there's a board policy involved too, which is the Family and Medical Leave Act, is that a big player in this, or it's just strictly the contract language?
I don't think that part is a player in this, it's the contract language. I mean, we have a designated amount of sick leave each year, and we just kind of thought, is there some way we can alleviate the confusion behind it as to what it exactly is, and then have more flexibility with the sick leave that for those that do have young children would be able to utilize their leave for their children as well.
I know, and I can't remember how long ago it was, but I know one of the big ones was the emergency leave, maximum 5 days, and then it was, they added something to the spouse's immediate family, what it's defined as. You know, and still, and I mean, I even sit here and I read this, and I kind of go, somebody's trying to tell me who's important to me. And even though there's a big list there, okay, I mean, I've lived in this town a long time. There are a lot of people that live in this town that are getting up there in age, and as they pass away, so I can go to that person's funeral. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest. I could go to my father's funeral, and it's not a big deal, but people who live here and probably are closer to me, I'm kind of being told I can't go without taking personal day. You know, so that's what we're saying as far as, there's just situations that if we could clean it up, it'd make it a lot easier.
Okay. So I'm not necessarily seeing all these subdivisions written here, so are there regulations or something somewhere that provide all of what you're saying to me about
Emergency
where your
leave.
child's appointment goes under, yeah. Dr. Sullivan, do you know?
Mr. Reed?
If I could try to shed a little bit of light from
Yes,
when, now with ASOP, as those are all entered into the system. The person that monitors that now is our payroll manager. Cindy in HR used to, all of those kind of buried her. And so we moved it to payroll a couple of years ago. And so now Vonda Gabb monitors that. And you're right, there is some confusion, I think, among staff members on what counts as what. A number of years ago, we wrote a primer that tries to define that a little better. And I gave that to Vonda to clean up and maybe redistribute to help. But the biggest misconception is, you're right, in emergency leave, because it's defined as accident, illness, or death. And so taking your child to an orthodontics appointment isn't one of those. Now, taking your child to have a impacted molar removed probably would be. You know, it's those that you don't know which way they're gonna go. Going to Bismarck for a doctor's appointment for yourself as the employee, as defined in what both parties have agreed to, that's pretty easy to determine. But then if you have your kids work with for checkups too, you are in both realms then. So, and so occasionally we have those that somebody has to make the decision on. In terms of emergency leave, a lot of you didn't have the pleasure to have this on for 25 years in a row. I think, Mr. Fay, you probably were in on some of the tail ends of those to help define it and add the day for the non-family member and things like that. This table has talked about paid time off, PTO. And certainly that's, at that particular point, both sides then, but maybe they've changed their minds, said, that's something I don't know if we can afford that, because that's guaranteed that they will use them, pretty much. Or at least former groups thought that. And there's one little piece in Century Code that says you must give teachers 10 days of sick leave. And so that's out there as kind of something to remember, that if you go with PTO, you also have to give them 10 days of leave, or so we thought last time we discussed that. And really, it's not sick leave that's a problem. It's the definition of emergency leave and doctor appointment within that causes the confusion. And there are times where it is not clear. I mean, you as a staff member go for an appointment, doctor's appointment, and it is a doctor's appointment, but then there's an issue, so then it becomes a treatable thing, and so then it falls under that illness. I have to go get a CAT scan. That's not a doctor's appointment. There's something wrong, and so then it's sick day. So as humans, there's going to be a lot of different combinations and permutations on this. And so I agree with Jay, if you can find a fix, awesome.
Well, can we just, if it's sick leave, it's sick leave? I mean, can you do that, or is there codes that
As long as we know what sick leave is. If you can write a good definition that covers it, be perfect.
Okay, that's my goal.
Okay.
Runny nose? Yep.
Well, I don't have kids, so, I mean, how many days do you get to take your child to the doctor, or if they're sick, do you get out of your sick leave? How many?
5.
It all goes under
Your emergency leave.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And 5 seems like a lot when you think about it, but then when you have, a child who's got diabetes, or, you've got those other extenuating.
This is, a letter that was given to us, a teacher whose son is a diabetic, had an accident during a sports injury, that was out, then had the stomach flu, and all of a sudden it's October and all 5 days are gone.
Man, I could, those cases that go beyond that, I think I can speak for Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Stremick and Mr. Koppelman in that since I've been in the central office in that arena, I've never seen one of those superintendents deny additional emergency days. And so the latitude is there because they get that. They get the importance of that. And I know you have 5, and yeah, you have to use those 2 personal days.
That's
And it used to be
where-
all of them, you
Yeah.
know, but
Mhm.
that was.
We negotiated that a few years ago.
Negotiated, and that helped a lot of people with the, I'm saving those days for this major event and those things, but.
And that's I think the part that we're looking at is it's almost like there's a penalty for being a parent and having a sick kid because you do have to use those personal days. So now you no longer have personal days because you've had to use them up before you can get extra emergency leave for that. Well, I mean, I look at it going, I have both spectrums of children, so young ones that tend to get sick as well as those that are in sports. And I'd kind of like my personal days where I can maybe catch a sporting event here or there that's out of town. So it just almost seems like it's a penalty when you do have that to take away those 2 personal days before they could utilize more of their sick leave.
And I guess we didn't look at this last year when we did up the personal leave, because it does say, where's that?
It's the current.
Personal leave accumulated in previous, earned for the current contract year. So if you're past that year 11, you'd actually have 3
Yep.
that you'd have to use all
If
3.
you hadn't used them prior to that. You know, if your kid gets sick in May, more than likely you've used them, but maybe not.
Maybe.
Okay.
But it, I know that Vonda, you know, that it's tags it for there's 2 separate categories, banked and those that were granted this year. But I guess I'm also cautioning the group too, if you move into a PTO or something like that, then be careful because those people that need those additional 30 days that are granted might go away if you paint yourself into that corner. And I don't think anyone here would want that to happen.
So when you grant additional emergency leave, is it still coming out of this person's sick bank? Or
Yes.
just giving permission to use those sick days?
Yes.
Okay. Just for my edification, what happens if somebody runs out of sick days? Does that ever happen, or people have got them
Oh,
banked?
it does, yeah.
Happened to me my first year here teaching. And at that time, I think people, if I remember right, you had
Before the sick
people-
bank, they
right.
could donate back.
People donated a personal day
Yeah.
that I could use,
Yeah.
and then they
If-
ended up.
If it happened now, they could apply for sick bank.
That's right, it's just not on, it's in the next.
That's the next page.
Sick bank is pretty tight in that it's life-threatening or catastrophic. And, you know, a broken hip or a sick child, you know, there's been some sick bank that's been approved for children because it was catastrophic and life-threatening, but others it hasn't. So again, I caution what's in there. And there's no language in here about day deducts because it's a contract, and it's really it's breaking a contract if you don't work those days. It's a contract violation, but in some cases, people are out of leave, and that is the option.
Okay.
Or that's what happens. They're unable to work their contract.
Okay. So,
Write a great plan and then sell it to the other districts in the state. You generate a lot of money and use it for the salaries. It's a tough one, you know, and you can
It-
look, I'm sure you guys have looked at the other school districts,
Yes.
Mhm.
they have
Yeah,
similar
it's-
stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
There just isn't gonna be a magic bullet, I don't think, but maybe we can do better than this, because this has been here a while.
You know, we have made improvements.
Yeah,
And,
I agree.
and there have been improvements in the past, but it is very confusing, and especially with the adaptation of ASOP. ASOP has been a more so, because you do have so many more things to put them in, you wonder where to put them, so.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to put that out there, and if you wouldn't mind, we wouldn't be opposed to trying to put something together language-wise and proposing and discussing.
Okay,
But
well, do
it's
we want
Not
to,
that it'll be easy.
No, it's not gonna be easy.
well, I mean, do we want to go through this process at the table and,
We could certainly do that, that would be better.
okay. Are you comfortable facilitating that, Dr. Sullivan?
All I'm doing is taking notes.
Okay, so I still am having a hard time putting it succinctly. If we're, you know, define the issue. The issue is that, one, leave is confusing, and two, we feel like people with children are being penalized in essence. Does that sum up to the concerns?
Mhm. I mean, it doesn't just have to be people with children. I mean, your emergency leave is your husband as well, or your
Elderly
significant
parents.
elderly parent. I mean, you can, there's been others that have had the elderly parent that's you know, we had a staff member last year that went through that and had to use her personal leave for the week because, you know, comes down to those last few days and what are you gonna do?
Okay.
So I mean, it doesn't just affect parents.
So it talks about identifying interests.
Yeah, that's what, where'd those exercises go?
Yeah, see, now according to this, I can use 5 days for my child being sick.
Mhm.
I can use 15 for myself,
Mhm.
but I can only use 5 for my child. I don't know. I guess I think back to, yeah, that affected us.
Mhm.
We had 2 kids at home, and I can remember us going, okay, I've used this day, and now you use this one, and okay, I've got my 5th day, you have to take the next 2. And I remember those discussions, making sure that we, you know, tried not to go over that. And to me, that I think is a big one.
And we do have some single-parent families
Mhm.
in our district that don't have the luxury of a second parent to swap with.
You know, so, you know, that language there, maximum 5 5-day sick leave from the total 15 allowance may be used for accidents, illness, or death involving the teacher's or spouse's immediate family. I mean, even if you, I don't know. If we, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is right now, but that to me is, when I read that, that's a concern. Because you're right, that's an elderly parent also.
Mhm.
And I guess if I have to use 15 of my sick leave days to take care of my mother, who's not gonna be around for very long, I feel maybe I should be able to use those days. I'm not using them for me, but I'm using them for somebody pretty important instead of 5.
So Dr. Sullivan wrote under interest flexibility in using sick leave days. That,
Mhm.
Yep,
I think that's a good way to.
that's a
describe
great way
it.
of putting it.
You know, I'm just throwing out, there's a lot of scenarios. Everybody can come up with scenarios, but,
Right.
so if we can
Okay.
find something in there, I don't know.
Now, the thing that stinks about representing the board in this situation is that our interests, for, in some way always reflect the financial aspect, so it makes us seem like the bad guys, I think, a lot of times. But I think that the interest financially in trying to solve this problem is that we still want it to be somewhat predictable and affordable, right? Because if we did, like Mr. Reeve was saying, and had paid time off, then that would be a lot more expensive. So we want to be able to solve the problem without making it cost so much more that's going to affect other areas. So to any other specific interests that we really need to, I guess I would want it to be fair.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
That's
I agree.
I think that's a hard concept sometimes to define and get to, because everyone's situations are so different, but.
You're talking fair or equitable?
Fair, not equitable necessarily. I'm a special educator, it's equal opportunity,
Well,
Equal access.
Are you ready?
talking sick leave and emergency leave, or just
Well,
emergency leave?
because emergency leave, as we're not, and how it ties in.
I mean, this probably isn't
Are we ready for options?
it's not a one-night fix, I don't think, but.
No, but we can start throwing
Yeah.
out. I was just checking that there were no other topics that directly tied into this one.
Well, we could.
We do have one
We
out,
have
one.
flexibility.
Flexibility.
Mhm.
Well, we,
I mean, is it kind of one and the same issue?
it's not the same issue, but it might actually be a great time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Because in aspects, you're concerned about affordability, and we're actually thinking that our flexibility of leave would save you money.
Okay. And so when you're talking about flexibility of leave, is that including now personal leave, or is it just sick and emergency leave?
Go
I
ahead,
think-
Sarah.
Well, I think the flexibility of leave is, right now, we can only take it in 2-hour increments, and we were hoping that we would be able to change that to take it into shorter increments, so then we wouldn't have to be gone as much. So I mean, if you make an appointment as early as you can in the morning, and you can get there by 8:30 or 9, you don't have to be gone for 2 hours or take a 2-hour leave, you can just be gone from 8:30 to 9.
Okay.
That's
would-
kind of what we're, or, in shorter increments, so that we wouldn't have to be gone.
Because teachers, if we're doing appointments in town, basically, we're gonna try and do it as early in the morning as we can, or as late in the afternoon as we can.
Yeah.
And right now, if like Sarah said, if you have an appointment in the morning, and you're going to miss 45 minutes, you have to take it in 2 hours.
Okay.
So if we could shorten that to, can I take it in an hour? Can I take it in 30-minute increments? Yeah, there are some logistical things, we understand that, but I'll be in the classroom more,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have to take my 2 hours.
Mhm.
I can maybe only miss the first 30 minutes of class. Now, like I said, there's some logistical things we have to figure out, but
So I would suggest that
Both
this is
leave
part of that,
personal and yeah.
part of this conversation, and that actually probably goes under options as part of the potential solution to the problem, yeah?
If I can interject for just a moment.
Yes.
If we were all to look at the handbook that was handed out by Ms. Poppenbeck, and we went through exercise A, and we went through and identified positions and interests. A position is a solution to an issue. An interest is a concern. And right now I'm hearing a solution. Which
No.
is
Yeah.
short, and I'm not criticizing it, I'm
No,
just
no,
trying
that's
to
fine, yeah.
facilitate a process.
Yeah.
You know, which is less than 2-hour increments,
Right, it
which
could-
is a solution.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that the concern has been clearly discussed between the parties.
So the concern, is it still just flexible, well, that says flexibility in using sick leave, so
Well,
the concern is different than that for what you're talking about. Flexibility and.
Flexibility and leave was the topic, but it was both for personal and sick.
Okay.
Was the flexibility for the topic that I had brought up. So I don't know if we're still talking about the last topic or.
If you combine the flexibility of leave into simplifying leave language, the interest is there still. Flexibility in
Yes.
using leave.
Okay, and so we could add flexibility in using personal leave as well, and then that would be the interests are represented for both of those issues?
Yeah, because it would definitely be it would help with the simplifying of the leave language. Well, it really doesn't simplify it, it just changes it. From whatever, the 2 hours currently right now to less.
Okay. So does it need to be its own hot topic still then? Or, because I think what you're saying might be a potential position or solution to what we're talking
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
right now.
for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And if it does happen to become a potential solution, then obviously we could take it off the topic
Okay.
board.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess if we're going back to our process, do we think that we've identified all of the interests? Because if we have, then we could start talking about options.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody's looking at me. Am I supposed to say
Can
something?
we start with options?
Pardon?
Can we start with options?
As long as the parties are comfortable that all of the interests have been identified. I'm not saying that we can't go back perhaps and identify additional interests later on. That wasn't specifically a question that was addressed to Ms. Poppendieck, so I don't know. I imagine we can do whatever we want as long as everybody knows.
I was just gonna say that. You beat me to the punch.
We can do whatever we want. She's not here. Okay, well, maybe we should just have a separate page, and then or a line or something, and if we think of another interest as we're talking, we can add it.
Maybe we could use a different color for the options.
Ooh, good idea.
Be colorful. Then if we do, we can go back to red, if there's another interest that we think of.
Mhm.
Option number 1 is that sick leave is defined as sick leave, and there is no definitions for emergencies. It's an option. It's an option.
It's an
No,
option.
absolutely.
So-
Remember the ground rules, or not the ground rules, but the training.
Yep.
Brainstorming, you don't discuss them,
All
you
options.
don't judge them, we just list them,
Okay, so
okay?
So-
Let me catch up.
all,
If you could repeat yourself. Mr.
Sick leave is defined as sick leave. There's no definition of emergency, so you have 15 days,
no subdivisions.
no subdivisions. Twyla's over there going, now how am I gonna put this in the minutes?
Oh, obviously, that's broad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mr. Fay said something brilliant.
Well, that'd be a first. Option number 2. After your if we don't change the emergency leave, after using your 5 days, seek additional days in so many numbers before using personal, or not having to use personal days.
Okay, so.
So you would ask
basically,
permission for more
without
after
having
5.
to use your personal days.
Petition for more.
Petition for more. There you go. Number 3.
If you just designated childcare days,
Okay.
they weren't emergency days. They were just childcare days.
So
What
you're,
about-
Maybe you reduce your sick days to 10, now you have 5 days of childcare days, 5 days of emergency days.
I don't have kids anymore. I want my 15.
Remember what we're training with?
okay,
Okay,
so.
a hybrid
designated
option might be
days.
that.
You're getting
But I, okay.
I'm not saying.
A
Number
hybrid
4.
option of what's up there might be that specifically caring for children falls under the sick leave umbrella instead of the emergency leave.
I like that. It's a good one.
Okay, so that's another.
Another option. Shall I let you catch up?
Okay.
We still haven't put up
No.
there using leave in smaller chunks.
Now it is.
And I'm just gonna, we kind of talked about it, did we say caring for children falls under sick, not emergency? But what about a spouse? What about a parent? I would like, I think an option would be to include that.
Just,
Because,
does it
what's
fall
that?
up here?
No, that where it says designate, oh, where are you at? I'm sorry.
Designate childcare days.
We're
Sick
right
leave
in the middle.
is
One.
sick leave.
Nope,
Nope.
right here. Wait, 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 it's not my thumb, my finger.
sick leave defense.
Define the sick
No,
no,
next
down.
one down.
Second from the bottom. Caring for children falls under sick, not
Yep.
emergency.
Right.
I mean, I think if we're going to say caring for children, yeah, I know we can say immediate family, but, how we find that word, but, you're going to have to care for a spouse at some point in time. You're going to have to care for a parent at some point in time. I think we should have a little broader language than just children, if we do something like
And
that.
that's what I'm asking, does it fall, do
Sick
both of
leave
them
is just
fall
sick
under
leave.
this?
Caring for.
Yeah.
Oh, I see
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But
Or
are you saying
subdivision.
that there's still a distinction between the act of caring for somebody versus I'm gonna go visit my brother in Ohio because he had a serious accident and I don't know if he's gonna make it, and that would be emergency leave. Whereas if your brother's living with you and you have to care for him or whatever, then it's sick leave. Are you making that distinction, or are you?
I think he's removing the word children and putting immediate family to include grandparents and spouse.
I just think it needs, if we do something on that, like I said, we're just
Okay.
coming up with options.
Okay, so caring
So-
for immediate family falls
Yeah.
under sick, not emergency.
Yep.
PTO fit under the top one then?
That would be a completely different
It'd be
concept.
a trump card. It would-
We could put it on
Wipe 'em all
there.
out.
It's an option.
We'll just say, if there's a possible affordable PTO. If there's not, if we did some research.
Another option, if other things don't work out, taking only one personal day versus 3 before petitioning for more.
Okay. So he's saying you could use one, you would still have to take one, but
Yeah,
not 2
so-
or 3.
And that's what I'm saying, this is the interest. Right?
That's the option. For the interested would be
Well,
flexibility.
Yeah, but that's why, okay, that is an option, so my question is that using one included in this?
No, because on that one, we're using none. Now we're saying, okay, another option is, okay, rather than using all your personal days for the year, let's say I've used all of them, and now I have 3, and it's October, and my son gets injured or whatever. So then I would take 1, which still leaves me with 2 left, before I petition for more.
We have a lot of options.
Mhm.
Does that work?
Okay.
All right. What's the easiest?
No, we're supposed to develop objective
Oh.
criteria.
Well, isn't that objective? What's the easiest?
That's subject.
Yeah.
I think this is the hardest part because I think it's kind of hard to do it this way because you don't want your criteria to subconsciously be pointing in certain directions. Does that make sense? Like it's hard to develop criteria without knowing which of those is kind of going to lean towards. But let's try.
Well, can we start with one of yours?
Sure.
Affordable.
Perfect. And what does that mean?
You gotta tell us that.
In my mind, Sullivan, go ahead, I'm
If
sorry.
I can just interject, my experience with this process is that it's not unusual to get to this point and then set it aside and think about it
Right.
and deliberate additional options and come back to it.
Okay. So are you suggesting that we sleep on it, so to speak, and see if we can come up with criteria for next time? Or?
I'm saying it's not unusual to set it aside and deliberate it and perhaps come up with additional options.
He wants us to
Well-
make our own decisions, guys.
Well, okay, we have a lot of options up there. Okay. Can we talk about some thoughts on, we do pros and cons? Maybe, I mean, yeah, we're probably not gonna come to a conclusion tonight, but,
Okay.
I mean, pros and cons of different things up there. Like I said, well, which one's the easiest? Well, obviously, sick leave, fine, sick leave, not emergency leave, hey, you use it, you have those days, and there's no subdivision. Wouldn't that be the simplest?
The simplest.
But is that affordable?
Keep in mind that when you're looking at your criteria now, it was called a three-stage factor analysis. Stage one was the feasibility factor, which was legal, affordable, workable, ease of understanding, and simple and flexible. Stage two was benefit factor. Does it satisfy important interests? Does it harm any important interests of either party? And stage three was the acceptability factor. Is it perceived as fair and equitable? Is it acceptable as part of the overall agreement? Are there political problems connected, and can it be reworked so it's acceptable?
Okay. So we could go through the options for each stage and talk about, so that's on page 20 if anybody has their
I
manual.
left
with
mine
them.
in my truck, sorry.
So the first question is, are all of those choices legal? Right? And I guess I don't know, so none of this is affected by the Family and Medical Leave Act?
That's time without pay.
That's time without pay?
But it secures the job position and benefits.
Okay. Okay, all right. So then the second one is affordability, so do we want to ask Mr. Reeve what his sense is about the price of various
wow.
options?
Yeah, I know, it, as I said, it's been a long time since we looked at PTO, but the assumption that those groups meant or thought would happen then is, if you're given those days and you, at that point, I don't know what they do in the public sector, people have to help me, but I don't know if they limit how many you can bank. I think they do.
Mhm.
And so then it pretty much, they become like a vacation day. And so the auditors are gonna make us amortize those out as being expended on an annual basis. I think you'd have to budget for the cost of the sub and all of that good stuff. And during that time, we just said, wow, that's more than we want to spend on this.
And that paid time off rolls everything, including personal leave, into one. But
Yep.
then you said by century code, we would still have to have 10.
I think you would have to
Days that are
define
labeled
10.
sick days.
And that would, I don't know if we'd have to have I haven't read that century code in a while, but I think we'd need a AG opinion on that to make sure we weren't violating that.
Okay, so PTO might not be legal.
Might, well, it could be if you want to lavish it, you know. Here's 10 sick days and then here's an additional 20 PTO days too.
Could it be just a sick bank for those 10 days
Yeah, I don't know.
that could be applied for?
I'd have to, yeah, that would be important for us to read the century code, and that's something I can do, report later on. But in terms of the other ones, you know, to put a monetary amount on it, it would obviously depend on where you go. If you're taking the personal, you know, you don't have to use any, that's a cost. Because right now there's, for lack of a better term, skin in the game if you have to use a personal day. And most of us that got to that point, and I've had this with mom and dad and a brother, you're glad to use that day, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, but there, if there's a sub, there's some expenses there. So it would depend on which one you went. And then sick leave defined as sick leave. So what does it cover? That would be the question that flew in my head. Is it just sick then? It's not bereavement? It's, you know, anyone in your family is sick, then it counts, but if it's a funeral, it doesn't. You know.
Yeah, and then could you use the sick bank then for anybody in your family too, if it's all the same?
Yeah. I don't know, that wasn't answers, that was cloudiness. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
But do you have I guess it's hard to know, do you have a general sense of how much it costs in essence for every personal day that's not required to be used? Does that make sense? So if we take it down to one, it would be less costly than saying we don't have to use any personal
Right.
days. But
Well, I think we did some of that when we added to the, our personal days. I think the group asked me to cost that out, and it's basically the
Cost.
price of the sub times.
So the price difference wouldn't be any different whether it was a personal day or a sick day.
Absolutely, yep.
It would be the same.
Yep.
But it would be a whole lot different in the eyes of the staff member, feeling more appreciated, that, you know, I can still go see my daughter in her basketball or track event versus, okay, sorry dear, I can't go.
right. I think the cost difference comes in that the total number of leave days would probably increase for that reason, because you could go to the basketball game, whereas before you couldn't have. So I think that's where there would be some increased cost. It wouldn't be the same as granting every employee an additional personal day, because not everyone's gonna be in that situation, so it's not gonna, and I don't know if we would even have an idea of what percentage of people that affects.
Yeah, that'd
To
be-
know what the price point is on it. But I guess if we use the cost of a personal day, I don't know, would 50% be fair? Like 50% of a personal day for each personal day that we didn't acquire, be a fair estimate?
I don't know. We'd probably, and because the negotiated agreement changed for this year to not include previous ones, I think this is the first year, or is it the second year?
Yeah, we did that,
I think it's, I don't remember. It
that was,
said
that
the
was,
second
that
year.
was,
We could have payroll go back and count how many days that they had to use first before Dr. Sullivan granted more.
Like how many people did that?
Yeah. I mean,
This
that would be a definitive historic number for.
this would be the first year that somebody who was the year beyond year 11 would have to use 3 days
Yes.
versus 2.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. How much of a headache is that? I mean, is it pretty easily accessible from a computer database?
It's in our accounting software.
Well, I wouldn't
We can
mind
do
that
that.
information if it's not.
So it's personal days used prior to granting of additional emergency.
Mhm.
Okay, past 2 years.
Mhm.
We can get that.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
I know with ASOP, Mr. Reap, is that when you put emergency leave, child sick, I think is an option in there as well, correct?
Yeah,
I don't recall because I don't have a child anymore that fits that category.
It's just emergency.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just emergency.
I think they put notes in though.
Yeah, notes
Right.
to your administrator.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
because
it-
the teacher enters it, right?
Right. It would be interesting to see how many days are used for children being sick. And that would be assuming that everybody was professional and entered it as such.
Right.
You mean my runny nose didn't count all those years?
I think we probably need to gather information before we
are
can
we
move
at a
forward
point?
on
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Just kind of curious as to what your thoughts are on using smaller increments.
I think it's an interesting idea. I'm not immediately opposed to the idea. I think there's logistics is primarily the issue with that. So you have to ask people that affects.
Well, and this might be crazy, but I'm wondering where the 2-hour rule is written.
It is, it's in the negotiated agreement.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yep,
For
it is.
Personally,
Personal.
It's first.
but not for sick
Not for
leave
sick
or
leave.
emergency leave, it's not in.
So do they just carry it over then? That-
That must be
Because I know
misconception
personally,
then.
I've been told that I had to
Personally.
take
Yeah.
2-hour increments for a doctor's
That's-
appointment.
I-
And I walked back in the building at 8:30. My appointment was at 8 o'clock, and I was back in the building at 8:30,
And we
but it
have a
came
lot of
out as
that.
2 hours.
I know, my wife just had one too, and she said, well, I have to take 2 hours.
That's
So
why I
that's
asked the
interesting.
question. I don't know where that rule is written. I personally don't.
Is it
Okay.
typical to get a sub for 30 minutes?
You know, maybe
So,
Well,
that's
but
just
I-
subs, you need a
building
2-hour
principle.
increment.
That's the logistic part of it, but I think a lot of times, you know, if you have an early appointment within your building, you say, hey, can you cover my first 15 minutes of class? Because that's all I'm going to miss. Or, okay, I have an appointment scheduled at 3:30, I gotta get out of here at 3:15. I mean, a lot of times I think we could handle it without even getting a sub in certain situations. But I think right now, and apparently it's a misconception, is that all leave has to be taken in 2-hour increments. And you're right, I think some
Right.
administrators are saying it has to be that way.
Does our system allow for smaller increments of time, whatever system we're using to record?
Mhm.
It's by it's hourly, so yeah.
It's by the hours.
We
can't
used to
do
have
half
all of
hours.
these in days, but now it's all ASAP converts it into hours. So
Right.
And partial hours.
everything can be put into a decimal.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, there, we just solved part of the problem. Have to educate some people, I guess. Or, yeah, figure out if it's written down anywhere that it's not.
I'm gonna take a picture of it before we leave.
You want me to write? I can write.
That's what
Take a
cameras
picture
are
of
for.
what? Oh.
I might have another option to
I have
add there.
it written down.
Sure.
I was trying to look at all of it, sorry.
Yeah.
And this might be up there already, but if we, I think, 15 days is plenty. So if we had our 15 days, you have your 5 emergency, which is your, accident, illness, death, funeral, that kind of thing. But the other 10 days can be used for yourself for a doctor's appointment, your child, or immediate family, like, appointment. So we could word it maybe something like that. So then the other 10 can be used for those things. And if you don't have to use emergency leave to take your child to a doctor's appointment, then you probably wouldn't run out of your emergency leave. That could. So you still have your 5 emergency, and then the other 10 can be used for yourself, your child, or immediate family for doctor's appointments, or if you're sick.
That kind of, sort
Is
of,
that
I
kind of
think,
what
goes
they're-
in with that middle one. Basically caring for, self or immediate family falls under sick and not emergency.
Yeah.
Is that what
Oh.
you're, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't say self on there, but,
Mhm.
Well, yeah, yourself would be emergency, it would be sick leave, no
right,
matter what.
Mhm.
but, so.
Okay.
I think we're,
Yeah, but
I
guess
think
we
we're in a
do
good.
the same.
Do we need to table this?
Well, maybe this is a good place to pause and
debrief.
work through the rest of the agenda and take a look at scheduling the next meeting date. I'll do my best to debrief the conversation, but I'm pretty confident I'm gonna miss something. So,
Wait a minute.
You know, in terms of the debrief, the minutes from February 20th, 2017 were approved. The ground rules were assigned. The parties listed topics for discussion with the understanding that there are 2 more meetings remaining when additional topics can be presented by either party. There was a discussion about simplifying the sick leave language in terms of item Roman numeral 6B. Interests were discussed and options were discussed. And there was also some discussion about personal leave. Am I missing that? Am I right about that?
Mhm.
Whatever you missed, I'm sure Twyla got.
And so we're at the point where we can still provide additional interest if the parties choose to, and/or additional options for consideration as we continue to try and work towards a solution on the proposal. Is there anything I missed?
We briefly discussed the length of the contract. And we'll
Decided that we would discuss it more in
Right,
depth
yeah.
next time.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. The dates, the housekeeping items of the dates and changing Hagan Junior High to Dickinson Middle School were okay pending discussion of the length of the contract and some other issues. Anything else? Okay, so that takes us to scheduling the next meeting date and time. There's a school board meeting on Monday. Foundation meeting on Thursday. Foundation meeting doesn't necessarily preclude us from meeting, but I would suggest, I don't know, Vince, how long it's gonna take for you to pull some of this data together that's been requested.
Shouldn't be that long.
Okay.
So we're thinking next Tuesday or Wednesday?
Sean, where are you going?
Yeah.
But not until the 20th.
Okay.
We're good Wednesday.
We're good. Is that Wednesday?
Okay. So, just Tuesday doesn't work?
DEA meeting.
DEA meeting on Tuesday? Wednesdays are tough for me because of church responsibilities. I could do it if that's the only day that works for everybody else.
Lyle.
If we did the,
What day is the, what time is the DA meeting?
it's 4 to 5. So we could still do a.
Could we do this at 6 on Tuesday? We should be okay, shouldn't we?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We can go Tuesday, can't we?
I think so.
Okay, Tuesday at 6.
Tuesday 6?
Works for everybody?
14th.
14.
Yeah.
Or 14th.
Gives us an excuse not to well study.
Do you have another interest involved in this?
Well, yeah, but it's probably not gonna fly anyway.
Okay.
And in terms of the agenda, other than removing the signing of the ground rules, I would suggest that the agenda just needs to pretty much remain the same.
Will we have all of the topics listed like we did
In
last
past.
year?
We will list them, they'll be available through the minutes, if that's what you're asking me. But there are 2 meetings remaining when additional topics can be introduced.
Right, but we usually had under
Like number 5, before number 5.
discuss
Discussion.
topics, and then we would just list them all, and then as we completed them, they were highlighted or checked off. I don't remember what we
I
did.
understand what your point is, and we'll take care of that.
Okay, that was really helpful, I think, just to have it on the agenda.
And it is nice to see at the bottom, tentative agreements, if that we do see, so we can see that we are making headway and we're
Yeah.
That was nice to see.
Could we ever go back to the meeting time on the 14th? Could we possibly make it 6:15?
I'm okay with
Yeah.
that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
6:15-ish?
Yeah. I'll do my best.
And we could do 6:30 if you have
I
to.
mean, yeah, we can go later too. I mean, it's,
Well, then, 6:30 would work better for me. I have
Okay.
another meeting at
5
5:30 and I have to do a
hours.
presentation.
Oh, ask for what you need.
yeah, I mean,
6:30.
6:30 is fine.
Ish.
Okay, and then we have an understanding that one thing we'll try to discuss next time is the length of the
Yeah.
contract. Okay. Okay.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then the meeting is adjourned.
What was on?